Rain lashed the windshield, blurring the world beyond into an indistinguishable mess. Wind howled like a banshee, shaking Sarah's old Honda Civic. Lightning split the sky, momentarily illuminating the desolate highway stretching before her. It was a night that seemed to snarl, "Turn back! No one should be out in this." Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white. She was late, later than she'd ever been. A vital job interview in the morning, a chance to escape her dead-end life, and this storm threatened to ruin it all. "Just a little further," she muttered, her voice barely audible above the tempest's roar. The wipers worked tirelessly, battling the relentless downpour. Each flash of lightning revealed nothing but the empty two-lane highway, flanked by dense, menacing woods. The storm seemed to press in on her, suffocating, isolating. Then, through the deluge, a figure materialized by the roadside. Hesitation gripped Sarah. Picking up hitchhikers was reckless, especially on a night like this. But something in the man's stance, a droop of shoulders that spoke of utter exhaustion, tugged at her. And wasn't she desperate herself? She pulled over, the car a small island of light in the raging storm. Through the rain-streaked window she saw him approach, a tall, gaunt figure with his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He reached the passenger door, and for a moment, their eyes met. His were startlingly blue, almost luminous against the darkness of his face, filled with a strange mixture of relief and something else. Something Sarah couldn't quite place. He gestured towards the back seat, his voice a low rumble lost to the wind and rain. Sarah, her unease battling with a strange sense of obligation, unlocked the door. He settled into the back seat, bringing with him the chill of the storm. Water dripped from his hat and coat, pooling on the worn upholstery. He didn't speak, just offered a curt nod of thanks. But those eyes, those unsettlingly blue eyes, watched her every move in the rearview mirror. "Which way are you headed?" Sarah asked, trying to break the silence. Her voice sounded unnaturally loud in the confined space. "West," he replied, his voice a low, raspy whisper. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The miles ticked by, each one doing little to ease the tension that had coiled itself tightly in Sarah's stomach. The man remained an enigma, shrouded in shadow and silence. Every time she glanced in the rearview mirror, she found those blue eyes fixed on her, making her skin crawl. The storm raged on, mirroring the turmoil brewing within Sarah. There was something not right about the hitchhiker, something that whispered danger. Yet she couldn't bring herself to stop the car, to force him back out into the storm. Suddenly, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the car's interior. Sarah gasped, her blood turning to ice. The hitchhiker was gone. The back seat was empty. Panic seized her. Had he jumped out? Was she imagining things? She slammed on the brakes, the car skidding dangerously on the slick road. "Don't be afraid," a voice whispered, seeming to come from right beside her. She turned, her heart pounding in her chest, and found herself staring into those unnervingly blue eyes. But they weren't filled with malice, rather a deep, bone-chilling sadness. "You picked me up where I died," the hitchhiker said, his voice a hollow echo in the confined space. "This storm, it took me." Terror, raw and consuming, threatened to overwhelm Sarah. His form flickered in and out of view, translucent, a being caught between worlds. This wasn't a man, it was a ghost. Section 5. Vanished. The Disappearing Act. He reached out a spectral hand, his touch sending a jolt of icy energy through her. "Beware the bridge," he whispered, his voice filled with urgency. "Don't..." And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. The car was empty, the only evidence of his presence the lingering chill and the echo of his words. Sarah sat frozen, her mind struggling to process what she had seen, what she had heard. The storm raged outside, oblivious to the terror that had gripped her soul. Section 6. The Weight of Silence, Sarah's Fear. Silence descended, heavier than the storm clouds pressing down on the car. The rhythmic swish of the wipers and the hammering rain were the only sounds, each one a hammer blow to Sarah's already frayed nerves. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. "Beware the bridge." The ghostly hitchhiker's words echoed in her mind, each syllable etched in fear. What bridge? Why? 1,000 questions swirled in her mind, each one more terrifying than the last. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her body trembling uncontrollably. The logical part of her mind screamed at her to drive, to get as far away from this desolate stretch of highway as possible. But a strange paralysis held her captive. The fear was crippling, but so was the chilling warning. Could she simply ignore it? Section 7. Racing against the storm, a desperate drive. Sarah took a deep breath, the air catching in her throat. She had to move. She had to get out of this storm. Maybe, just maybe, she could outrun the terror that clung to her like a shroud. She threw the car into gear and accelerated back into the storm. The rain was a relentless torrent, the wind buffeting the car, trying to shove it off the road. Each flash of lightning illuminated the desolate highway, revealing nothing but the endless ribbon of asphalt. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. Had she really seen a ghost? Was it just a stress-induced hallucination, a figment of her fear and exhaustion? No, the memory was too vivid, the terror too real. The chilling touch, the sorrowful blue eyes, the cryptic warning. They were seared into her mind. She couldn't outrun it, couldn't escape it. Section 8. Distant Whispers. The Name in the Wind. As she drove, she became aware of a new sound, a low whisper carried on the wind. At first, she dismissed it as the howling of the storm, but as she listened closer, she realized it was something else. It was a name, her name, Sarah, Sarah. The voice was faint, almost indistinguishable from the wind and rain, yet it sent chills down her spine. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, surrounding her, taunting her. Her fear intensified, morphing into a cold dread that settled deep in her stomach. The storm, the ghostly hitchhiker, the whispered name, it all felt connected, part of something sinister and inescapable. Section 9. The Crash. Reality intervenes. Suddenly, the headlights caught a flash of metal ahead. A bridge. The bridge. The ghostly hitchhiker's warning slammed into her consciousness with the force of a physical blow. Beware the bridge. She slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The car skidded on the slick road, tires losing their grip. She fought for control, but the car spun, a helpless toy in the grip of the storm. The world dissolved into a cacophony of screeching metal and shattering glass as the car slammed into the guardrail. Then darkness. Section 10. A glimmer in the wreckage, a sign of hope. When Sarah regained consciousness, she was disoriented, her head throbbing, the smell of gasoline heavy in the air. Rain was still falling, though the storm had abated somewhat. She was trapped in the wreckage, the mangled guardrail a testament to her near-fatal encounter with the bridge. As she struggled to free herself, she noticed something lying on the passenger seat. A small, leather-bound book, soaked but intact. It hadn't been there before. With trembling hands, she picked it up. The cover was blank, but as she opened it, a name, scrawled in elegant handwriting, caught her eye. The name was hers, and beneath it, a date, her birth date. Section 11. An Unsettled Soul, Sarah's Lingering Fear. Sarah escaped the wreckage, her body battered but her spirit unbroken. She stood on the side of the road, watching as a tow truck hauled away the mangled remains of her car, a symbol of a night she would never forget. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean and sparkling in the early morning light. But for Sarah, the world would never look the same. She clutched the leather-bound book, her fingers tracing the inscription of her name. Who was the ghostly hitchhiker? Why had he warned her? And what was the significance of this book? As she walked away from the wreckage, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had been touched by something ancient and powerful, something that defied explanation. She had survived the storm, but she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that this was only the beginning.